Good morning, gardeners. I am down here in the garden this morning. I'm filming from the east end of the garden, and we'll work our way kind of to the northwest and just see what's going on. There's a lot happening in the garden. This is my garden partner's cherry tomatoes. We don't even know what variety these are, but how cool is the coloration on these? Oh, something ate one of them, but they're kind of a cool color. So that'll be fun to see how those taste. She's got a lot of tomatoes on hers, some Romas that are getting ripe, and that'll be fun. I don't know what this bush is, but it's falling over, so we're going to have to work on that. The other side of her beds, she's got some poblano peppers. Looks like these are jalapenos down here. And then she's got some, I think this is a purple coneflower. That's going to be really pretty. But look at her poblanos. She's got a lot in here. Let's see if we can get a look. Aren't those beautiful? I picked peppers. I picked a peck of peppers yesterday, actually, from mine up at the house. So this is her yellow squash. I cut some yesterday, and I've been trimming some of the older leaves out, but she's got some on here. We've got cabbage. It's looking good. I don't need it to get super big, but I'm cutting those outer leaves to put into vegetable stock for canning, so that's been kind of fun. This is her zucchini. Apparently I didn't take very good care of it over the weekend because we've got some monster squash in there. She is growing, this is some kind of a butternut that is starting to get some fruit on. We can see one there. The backside of my cabbage and small row of carrots, they're coming along great. So we stepped forward into the squash beds, and this is a red curry squash. It's got an edible skin, a really dark reddish orange meat when it's done. I love those. I buy those to eat. This is my acorn. We're getting some of these on now. They've been really late getting started. Also, my acorns have always been more of a bush type, and these are very rambly. So we'll see. Right next to that, as I step over here, we have, I'm going to shade them too, watermelons. And they're pretty good size. They're not doing badly at all. Just the two on there, lots of vining, but just the two. Next we have the honeydew that I'm growing for my daughter, and it's got one fruit on. I've never, ever grown honeydew before. It's kind of cool. The rest of the plant looks really nice and healthy, just no more fruit on. Next, we're going to check out these kohlrabi. Mine aren't doing a darn thing on the other end, but Kim's green kohlrabi is starting to make bulbs, so that's pretty cool. I've never eaten kohlrabi, so I'm excited. I have some purple kohlrabi going. They're quite big. They've been in the ground a long time, but they're not bulbing. Radishes. She's got a small bed of carrots, and then the very last of her onions. I wanted to get over here closer to the onions. She's got some that are ready to pick. But we have had, you see the dirt mounds at the back of all the mulching and right in the middle. Something has been coming in and eating her onions. I had a couple damaged, but I have pulled most of mine in that area. And we'll see. I think she's had one eaten almost half, and I had some major chunks out of a couple. So we did put a mouse trap down here. I need to rebait it. The next melon is pretty exciting. This is a Sweetness, I have a couple of them on. A Sweetness 132 melon. They only get to about the size of a softball. And they say that they're best if you let them just ripen fully and drop off before you pull them. So we'll do that. It's really vining up nicely and not taking up a lot of space. So this empty space was my garlic bed in this whole area here, and you can see that I've got some of that ground squirrel or whatever it is diving into this area too. But I'm going to let this cucumber take over this space because it is on a mission. I was looking to see, we have some cucumbers on. I picked 12 yesterday. I've got more pickles than my entire family can eat in a year. So once I got cucumbers to actually grow, we ended up with 4 plants, and they're crazy. They're trying to take over the world over here. these are leeks that I put in the ground, and then the last of my onions out there, and we'll take a look at them from the other side. So, funny story about gardening. Yesterday I was reading on some of my gardening sites questions from new gardeners about how far apart to space your beds or rows. And clearly I can't answer that because my garden has completely closed all of the walkways. It's kind of a trick to get around through here now, but exciting all the same. So this massive plant here, I'm going to have to keep moving to try and get to one of the fruits. I've pulled two and sent pictures to the seed company today just to ask them what they thought it might be. Here's a fairly young one. It's probably 5 pounds or so. So of all the types of squash that I bought seeds for this year and planted, I planted this from a seed out of a package that I purchased, but this is not the seed that I ordered. I've never seen this squash before, so I'm hoping the seed company can give me some ideas what it might be and if it's safe to eat. But I did cut one this morning, and we'll see how they turn out. In the distance, we have to go over there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Are the geet squashes, the geet pumpkins, and they look amazing. I think they're just about ready to pick. This next squash is a delicata. This is actually some starts that I bought at the nursery, and I think that is what that monster, what I call the Franken squash, started out as. I think it's a cross-pollinated delicata, looking at the coloring and the striping, but it's obviously cross-pollinated with something much, much larger. So this is a regular delicata. It's about maybe 5 inches long, and it's probably the farthest along of any of them that we have growing. It's doing good. Here's another delicata that's growing kind of in a funny shape. It's got like a swirl pattern to it. Kind of cool. It'll be interesting to see how it looks when it's done. Hasn't started getting its colors or anything yet. So I'm just going to pan over through these big leaves here and get to the geet squash. See if I can open up enough to see one. It's probably about 18 inches long, and I think they're about done. The stems are starting to dry out on them, so I'm getting excited to pull one. We have at least 3 that size and more starting. Hello, little bee. So this down in the very front, these little small kind of wrinkly leaves, that is a cucamelon, which is a Mexican sour gherkin is the regular name of them. They call them cucamelons. They end up looking like little miniature watermelons, but they're a cucumber. You just pop them in your mouth and eat them. They'd be about the size of a cherry tomato or a grape tomato. And then I didn't think it was going to make it. It was the saddest looking little plant ever. So I gave it a roommate. I gave it let me back up here. I gave it a cantaloupe and a trellis. And the cantaloupe has apparently been talking to my cucumbers over there and is also trying to take over the garden. It's everywhere. I don't see any fruit on it yet. Lots and lots of flowers, and the bees are here today pollinating that for me. So the next little spot, we're just going to pan over here. This is about a 4 by 8 bed of beans. They're black beans for winter, for dry storage. And this is what I was saying about the my beds overgrowing the walkways. It's closed. They've collapsed on either side. But they do have beans coming on if I reach down in the middle or pan in there a little bit. They are forming beans really nicely. There's a lot. There's some in here. See if I can get past all these leaves. And they just stay on until they're dry and rattly, and then I'll pull the plants, pick the beans, and shell them and dry them. So these are my celeries. Let's see if we can get a close look here. All my nice little stalks of celery grow in there. Someone asked me the other day, how do you know when to pick it? And I now know the answer. It's younger than these are. These are way overgrown and pretty tough, but they're working well for canning and stock. The zinnias have gotten absolutely huge and beautiful. And sitting down here in the evenings with the hummingbirds coming in on these is amazing. I've never grown zinnias before. I have some sweet alyssum in the middle, that white coming up through. The trellis is completely buried in here. The snapdragons are completely buried by the zinnias, but gosh, they're just gorgeous. They're so fun to grow. These are all about the same size. It'd be fun to do some bigger ones in addition to this size next year. I will definitely keep growing zinnias. Next thing here are the tomatillos. Again, they have closed the walkway completely, just with the weight of the fruit and the rain that we had earlier a couple days ago. I've pretty well closed everything down, but you can see the number of tomatillos growing in there. They're pretty cool. I'm starting to be able to, let's see, sorry, lots of motion. Starting to be able to, ooh, this one's actually pretty heavy. You're starting to be able to feel and see inside of some of them that they are, I don't know if you can see inside the hole there, but they are starting to make the fruit inside. There are 8 plants here. They're probably about 5 feet tall and absolutely covered in tomatillos. I was hoping to get enough for a batch of verde sauce to can, and we've easily, if any of these ripen, we've easily got that, plus lots more. Check out the color of this zinnia. Isn't that pretty? I love this really pretty kind of peach color. So at the end of the zinnia bed is the 3 broccolis, and they are coming up on 3.5, 4 feet tall, and still putting off broccoli every couple of days. So the sun's really coming out, so we'll see if I can still film a little bit here. But this is some of the onions. They've gotten nice and big. These are Walla Walla sweets here. I'll get my finger down here so you can see kind of the size of it. They're doing nicely. There are some red onions over here, and then a little sunflower plant. I deadheaded these pretty severely a week or so ago, and they are just covered with blooms again. So right behind the onions are the 3 bean teepees. The beans are probably up over 10 feet tall. This first teepee is green beans for fresh eating and canning. I had a neighbor pick 2 days ago for her family. Another neighbor's picking tonight for their family. And then I'll pick the next round for canning and fresh eating at my house. But it's lovely to be able to share these harvests with people. The next bean, here's my walkway, so it'll be kind of interesting to get through here. The next 2 teepees are flowering nicely, but those are another type of dry storage bean for winter, and they're just massive. They're doing great, and still climbing. They're going to go all the way to the top of that teepee, I'm sure. And just starting to set fruit, but again, those are ones that the beans will stay on until they're dry and rattly, and then we'll pull the beans, let them dry a little more, and then harvest all the beans for dry eating, like soups and stews, chili. So we're coming into the tomatoes. This first couple of tomatoes in here are Kellogg breakfast tomato, and see, there's a couple, leaves. A couple under there. They're getting there. There's some more. Hopefully starting to ripen soon, but they look awesome. There's a lot of them in there. Pause for a second. Well, we will just traverse the jungle together. If I fall, you'll never see this video. Underneath here, and we'll look from the other side, are all paste tomatoes. Lots and lots of paste tomatoes. I do have one, look at the size of this guy down here in the marigold. It's cat-based, so it's 2 blooms that fuse together. You see one blossom in there, one blossom in there, but it's huge. It already weighs over a pound. It hasn't started to ripen yet. But all along here, if I look underneath a little bit, I have tomatoes ripening from the other side, so we'll go over there and see those. So I think it's safe to say that it's time to prune the tomatoes again and do some hand pollinating, get some more fruit setting. But here are some of the ripe ones in there that I'll pick today and let them finish up in the house. And there's some more under here. So cool. Hiding in the broccoli is a patty pan squash. It looks like we have one that's just about, oops, so I can get through all this. Just about ready to pick. Let's see. Yeah, I think Kim picked that one tonight. She's really been hopeful to try these. So just on the other side of the broccoli, the tomatillos, and the tomatoes is, this was my spinach, lettuce, radishes, that kind of bed. I've pulled everything out of here. I've started reworking the soil, so I've got the broad fork down here ready to go. I just dumped a couple buckets worth of compost, and I'll broad fork this real quick, lay the sprinkler lines back down, and I'm going to plant it with a fall crop, probably rutabagas. My purple kohlrabi is right here, my sad purple kohlrabi. This is probably looking the closest to bulbing that I've seen in the purple kohlrabi. They're just long and thin. I really think I shaded them out with the turnips that were in here. I pulled the last of the turnips today. It's going to get the same treatment as this the lettuce bed got. And I cleaned up my beets today. The first smaller ones are yellow beets. They're really just getting going. And then the taller ones are white beets. And they're small size, great eating, but they can go a little longer. So I cleaned them all up today, took out all the damaged leaves, and hopefully we'll get some harvest from those yet. The parsnips look great. It's about a 3 by 8 foot bed. Some of them are really pretty big. I've pulled a couple of parsnips out. They were a little underwhelming for size, so they're nice and green. They don't look pest damaged. I'm just going to leave them go and see if they can get a little bigger. This is what's left of the main carrot bed. Again, it was about a 3 by 8 foot bed, and I've picked probably half or more of it. There's still quite a few carrots in there. These are just smaller. I had some poor germination. I came back weeks later and replanted new seeds, and I'm going to guess that these are mostly the younger seeds that are still in here, but there'll be enough to do another canning round with those. And the next bed was the peas. So this is the snap pea end. These bushes wrapped with the pink ribbon I'm saving for seeds. So I'm letting the pods dry completely, and let's see if I see one on here. So you can see some of the pods are completely dry and ready to pull off. And then I'll be able to harvest those seeds out of it and save them for next year. So I pulled out all of the center peas, and even though the trellis is still here supporting the seed peas on the end, I'm going to get this replanted probably in some Toganashi turnips for fall. They're kind of a fresh eating, cool weather, smaller turnip. So I think you can eat those raw. I think they'll be delicious. And then these are shelling peas or garden peas. Same thing on these. I'm letting them finish out their life cycle and dry. Here's a dry one right there. And then some green ones on the end. Because of course they're still getting water. I should probably cut the water to them and let them finish out. But those will be seeds for next year. So that is the garden with almost no walkways anywhere. And we'll be getting going on the fall garden as the rest of this finishes off.